Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ummah in Exile. Today we have a very important topic that we've been kind of mulling over, and it's the idea of Neo-Crusades, right? As we see this rise in Christian nationalist rhetoric becoming blatantly open nowadays, as we see the rise of Christian nationalists in positions of power and government, the proclamation of Christian fascism by public figures, the pushing of Christian nationalism by media pundits and all that who are trying to rally around this idea of Christianity, right? How does this relate to Islam? How does this relate to this ideological and physical warfare that has been waged on Muslims since the time of the Crusades? Did the Crusades really end? Or did the Crusades just morph into something else, right?
It kind of had a transformation in a way. It's more sinister in nature now. In the past, it might have been a little bit more direct, right? With the Pope issuing essentially a fatwa back in the day, and stating that this is a religious obligation among all Catholics and all Christians, that we must free the Holy Land, and it was such a strong rallying cry, primarily during the first Crusades, and we saw them obviously taking over Quds, right? It's really curious, and the reason why we kind of brought this subject up is because obviously you're in politics and everything, and we always have these deep discussions about where are our policies taking us. What do you think is this Neo-Crusade? What is the plot that they're going for? Is it are they just going to stop at Jerusalem, or do they have plans for something greater in mind, a new world order, one might say?
New world order. Well, I think we have to go back to the history of the Crusades. I know it's paraded around that the Crusades were this idea of religious war, but that's the lie that was sold to millions of young men who were sent to be slaughtered for the cause of a few wealthy Dajjalic Catholic leadership that wanted to profit off of the trade routes and off of the secrets that were buried in Quds, in the Holy Land, and they wanted to monopolize the knowledge that was coming out of the Islamic world, the mysticism, the deeply embedded religious historical secrets that the Knights Templar and so on and so forth took and are now buried in the records of the Vatican. It was not a religious war for them at that time. It was coded in religious language. But what it really was, it was a war of resources and power for them. And did they really end? I mean, there was the first crusade, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth crusade, right? The Ottoman, we forget, the Crusades were being fought all the way up into the Ottoman Empire. Crusades were being sent against the Ottomans, and they were being crushed one after the other, right? Did they really end? Did the Crusades really end? Well, okay. The first answer I give you to that is World War I. When the Ottoman Empire collapses in World War I, this British general by the name of Edmund Allenby goes to Damascus, where Salahuddin is buried. So he kicks the grave of Salahuddin and he says, the Crusades are back. Right? So right there and then, you can see the religious language or the religious motivation that they had, even though this was supposedly not a religious war. Right? Fast forward, and now we go into Iraq, where a lot of the evangelical leadership, including our very own George W. Bush, was calling this a crusade openly. Maybe, according to them, now the intention of literally meaning a crusade, it's a symbolic word. But symbolic words are not thrown around like that for no reason. A lot of young American men were being fed this sort of Christian fascist propaganda to motivate them to go and slaughter people they had never met before. Right? So yes, I think you're right. I think actually it became a lot more sinister than it was, because whereas before the Pope was openly calling for them and, you know, whatever his motivations were, now I think it's the opposite. Before, the Pope had material motivations manifest in religious language. Now it's changed. Now it's religious zealot motivations coated in political and material language. It's flipped. So these crusades are a lot more aggressive. And they've killed more Muslims. And they've destabilized more regimes. And they've caused more chaos in the region. So yes, we are and have been facing for the past century in Islam aggressive crusades against Muslims.
I think to add to that, because George W. Bush is a prime example of a modern day crusade. And after George W. Bush, you kind of had the introduction of Obama's more quiet policy, right, of drone striking. And if I'm not, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm pretty sure under Obama's tenure were the most amount of drone strikes under any president.
Yes.
Of course, Trump came in and kind of took over the numbers there, but
Still pretty close.
right, and it was again, this was more of a hush hush type of thing. It was behind the scenes, so that way there's not much of a public outcry. And it's interesting too, because back in the day when you kind of you mirror history, it might have also fallen into that kind of quiet nature of doing things again in a more sinister type of manner. And now we are struck, in my opinion, with a very dangerous individual in Donald Trump. And the reason why I say he's dangerous is not because of who he is or his position or maybe what crimes he might have committed. That aside, I think the moment, the catalyst that was the flip and it was a switch in Trump's mind was the assassination attempt.
Okay.
He has unfortunately surrounded himself, as we know, with yes men.
Correct.
And a lot of these yes men are, just like how you pointed out, are evangelical, hardcore evangelical. In particular, Mike Huckabee. And what did Mike Huckabee tweet out very recently? He said, "Trump, you have been chosen by God. You were the one who was chosen to survive this attack upon you. And it is your obligation to do as you please." So in essence, it is flattery, but there's a religious motivation behind it. Just like how you were saying, there's this guise of policy and politics, but underneath it is the true nature, which is this hardcore Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
Are we saying that Christianity, the Christian mindset, or the Jewish Zionist mindset, well, the Jewish mindset is a negative one? No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is that these hardcore factions that are at the forefront of policy making, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's not only dangerous to us as Americans, but more so it's dangerous to the Ummah as a whole, the Ummah that's in exile. I mean, we see what's happening right now in Gaza, number one. We see what's happening in Syria. We see what's happening in Masr. You know, people don't want to go and talk about these places. We've seen what's happened in Libya, right? You mentioned Gaddafi and stuff like that. The main issue that I see now with this new movement, this Neo-Crusades, is that it's again propped up with men wearing suits.
Correct. I like that.
And that makes a person feel at ease. Oh, this guy's a businessman. He's come to do politics with me. And one of the brothers, Calvin, he sent me a video, actually, of an Emirati guy saying, if I am to do business, even with the devil, as long as it benefits me, why not? So we see now a combining of this mentality of not only from the Christian hardcore radicals and the Zionists all teaming up, but dude, in my opinion, we also have a lot of fake Muslims that are tagging along and saying, yeah, this is a problem. Islam is a problem. And why? Because Islam is the system that corrects oppression, corrects economic disparities. It corrects immorality, not just within the household, but within society as a whole.
Right.
So, what's our next move then?
Well,
like, is it are we like hopeless? What do we have to wait for the Mahdi? What's your...
I think subhanallah. Well, two things. Number one, the idea that you're right. I like the way that you put that. This is a crusade being pushed by men in suits, and thus kind of diluting the image in the eyes of the average Muslim, right? You have to look at history. You have to look at history and how the crusades were instituted the first time when they captured Quds. And truly at that time the Muslim world was weak and divided. There was a Khalifa, sure, there was a figurehead at that time. No real power or authority. The real power lay within the hands of emirates and sultanates that had strayed from the message and the practice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands upon the Muslim. They had gone through that civilizational decay that we discussed in the earlier episodes. They had forgotten the mindfulness of the Quran. So the Crusader found an opportune moment to come and seize power in this divisive nature, where the emirs, the moment that the Crusaders landed on the shores of Quds, did not go with armies against them, but they went with deals. Right? They went with deals. They went and said to them, hey, you're here, don't attack me, I'm going to pay tribute to you. Hey, you're here, this guy and me are not friends. This emirate and I are not friends. I will ally with you to take them down if you give me a cut of his land. So the emirs of that time went to them with deals, and the emirs of our time are going to them with deals. This is the parallel. This is the work of munafiqun, right? And for 90 years, the Holy Land was under occupation. And it has been close to 80 years now that it has been under occupation. We forget that we've undergone a longer occupation before of Quds. This is the shorter one still. And may Allah keep it the shorter one. Right? But ultimately, figures do arise from the Muslim world who rally people by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, the help of Allah is always near. But the Muslim has to change the condition of himself if he wants this help to come. Allah says in the Quran, I do not change the condition of a people until they change themselves. Right? Right now we are an Ummah in exile. Are we even trying to go back home? I don't just mean in the physical sense, right? Just a couple moments ago when we were discussing, you talked to me about the new person that TikTok hired as a PR rep or something. And it's a Zionist IDF woman from the United States, if I'm not wrong, who moved to Israel, committed to living to Israel for good. They have the reliance to do that. They have the willpower to do that. Why don't we have the power or the willpower to do that, even spiritually, let alone make hijrah? But why don't we see our home the way they see theirs? Do we have as much of an investment as they do? And this is why these crusades are being so successful, right? Or have been so far, at least. Because they have found a Muslim ummah weak and humiliated. Weak, humiliated, with this deep sense of insecurity, where we think that we cannot carry our own banner anymore, that someone else has to carry the liwa, the raya for us, the banner for us, right? I don't believe that. I think the Muslim is very capable of doing that, and I think the Crusaders know the Muslim is capable of doing that, which is why they employ every tactic in the book to keep the Muslim divided and weak and oppressed, so that they may never organize a collective political power to challenge the systems that they have put. And we see this example repeated. From the collapse of the Ottomans, what was the first thing the European powers did? They partitioned the Muslim world. They set imaginary boundaries and borders. They exchanged populations. They stripped the hijab from women. They passed laws banning Arabic calls to adhan, right? They secularized language. They secularized life. They secularized education. everything to keep people away from the Quran and the Sunnah. But now they're seeing that as much as they tried, it never really worked. That for every push they would give, there was always 2 pushes back, right? They know that this is a resisting nation, and it is a nation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow to perish. This nation is not going to perish. This ummah is not going to perish. This is the promise of Allah. So this is why the Crusades have now morphed to come to the Muslim, to the Emir, to strike deals with them under the guise of policy, but with deeply embedded religious extremism. Number 2, yes, U.S. foreign policy, at least for the past 30 years, has been guided by evangelical nut jobs who believe in a corrupt version of the Bible, by the way, not even the real, original, whatever. It's more corrupt than even the first corrupt version. It's the Schofield Bible that was pushed around by an ultra-Zionist, right? This conformed the mindset of hundreds of thousands of evangelical Americans to see Israel and to see the Jewish people as saviors and to see them as a means of salvation for themselves. When in reality, Christianity and Judaism were actually at odds forever. It was Islam that protected Judaism. It was Islam that would save Jews from persecution and allow them to live freely in Muslim lands. This is the real history, right? There's 2 Jewish golden ages. One is in Muslim Spain and one is in the Ottoman Empire. Why are both Jewish golden ages in Muslim lands? If we've been at war we haven't been at war for thousands of years.
Okay.
The Christians, on the other hand, they desecrated their temples, they spit on them, they slaughtered them, whatever. And it's the same that they do to Christians in Israel now, by the way. So, this idea of the Schofield Bible, of Christian evangelicalism, has been shaping American foreign policy for 30 plus years. And within it, they see the Muslim as the enemy. They call us Gog and Magog, literally.
Wow.
They
call us that?
They call us, yeah, dude.
That's crazy.
So imagine that level of zealotry, wrapped in lies and deceit and hypocrisy. And they've exported that to the Muslim world.
Not only that, though, but I'll go a step further by stating that our imams and our scholars even have become influenced by this dunya, essentially. Obviously we kind of mentioned it a little bit in the group chat with that one sheikh. I don't even know if he's a sheikh.
He's not a sheikh.
Okay, he's a good speaker. I don't know his name, so I'm not going to go and say it. Just regardless, in case I'm speaking wrong, I don't want to say his name. But you see a lot of examples throughout history of just these people that they were either very poor and they got famous off of one little video and that got pushed by the algorithm, and now they are bought and paid for by these governments that are themselves bought and paid for by these larger powers at hand. And that's scary because, this kind of goes into the topic of ijtihad and ijtima', right? But we don't want to detract too much from the idea of the Crusades here, but it makes one person think, when you see so much oppression as a Muslim, deep down in your heart, you can see oppression and you can know that this is wrong.
Correct.
You don't need a spiritual leader to go and tell you that something's wrong necessarily, right?
Right.
It kind of goes back to your point of the Muslimin have this this shyness to them now. Oh, I'm scared of being labeled a terrorist. Oh, I should not be the one to go and walk with the banner. Someone else will, right? This insecurity. My only question is to you, and I guess to the viewer as well, how do you unravel this insecurity? Because we've seen this kind of hatred towards Islam be developed over multiple generations.
Right.
What is the path to reverse this? Does it have to be another Gaza? Because it seems to me that the only time a Muslim person wakes up is when they see another, right? But it shouldn't just be when we're in crisis that we wake up to reality. Right. We need to wake up to reality now, and pre-crisis to prevent it.
Yeah.
So what's the solution?
Well,
how do we change the mindset?
I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the nasr of Allah is with those that prepare, right? Allah is with you. Allah will grant you victory, and ultimately victory is from Allah, regardless of how much you prepare. But Allah loves a prepared people. He loves a prepared group that strives in His cause, because preparation is a sign of faith, right? Discipline, preparation is a sign of faith, is a sign of iman. When we return to that blueprint, that what are we fighting for as Muslims? What are we advocating for as Muslims? Is it to normalize falsehood so we can go back to our lives again, so we can drink our coffees again, so we can get our caramel lattes and go back to our corporate jobs? Is that what we're advocating for? Or are we advocating for a change, a deeply rooted change, a permanent change? Because if it's the first one, it's achievable. You can compromise. The same way that when the mushrikeen went to the Prophet, they said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we'll give you kingship. We'll give you these days to worship your God, and these days we worship our God. Did the Prophet say, cool, we can worship now? Yay, I'm a king, I can give da'wah as a king now. Is that what he said? No. He said, you give me the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I will not renounce my message. That is how important Islam is. Islam, not the label, not the name Islam, not the identity Islam. The deen, the way of life, the comprehensive system that pushes against oppression, right? And you know why these crusaders hate the term Sharia law so much? Because Sharia law is an actual system. Sharia law is not really like even what the boogeyman that they claim it is. Sharia is just a legal system that is based on divine guidance. And it can be molded by different societies according to their cultural needs and whatnot, right? It can be molded according to the needs of the time and whatnot, but it has a spiritual divine basis. Christianity never had anything like that. There's no Christian Sharia because Christianity by nature is the abolishment of the Sharia, right? Paul's Christianity, at least, not Jesus' Christianity, because we know Jesus' Christianity is Islam. It's the continuation of a message.
Right.
But Paul's Christianity, the Dajjal's Christianity, is the Christianity that abolishes the law, right? So now this is why white or non-white, whatever, but in America we see it primarily with white Christian fascists love this idea of weaponizing Christianity so much because they can mold it into their own fascism. They can advocate through it whatever they wanted. They did so in the past. They would give the slaves altered versions of the Bible so they wouldn't inspire rebellion among them. So they would actually teach subserviency through God, right? They're not shy about distorting the word of God for their personal gains. They're not shy about weaponizing the message of God for material worldly gains. And this is what they're doing right now. This is what Pete Hegseth promotes, what Ted Cruz promotes, what Peter Thiel and these guys promote, right? The dark, dark enlightenment. I don't know if you've heard of the dark enlightenment before.
Yeah, they followed this one guy, like he's like a prophet, astaghfirullah, like he's a prophet or something. He's like I forgot his name. I'll let you know, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's this idea of like destroying governments and pledging allegiance to like these corporate leaders. And, Dajjalic stuff, man. Really,
he literally, Pete Hegseth has a kafir.
He doesn't understand
in Arabic,
and he doesn't understand that that's condemning himself. He's saying he's a disbeliever, a denier of truth, because the word kafir means someone who conceals, right? Someone who acknowledges and then conceals. It doesn't mean someone who doesn't believe. It means you recognize something is true and then you cover it up because you don't want anybody to know. That's what a kafir is. We are literally led by these concealers nowadays from the very top of the pyramid, right? So these crusades are manifesting aggressively in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in France, or in Africa through France. We forget to talk about the Sahel and the aggressive war that France has been waging in African countries. You know, do you know that France never really stopped colonizing Africa? That when they left, they actually made African nations, after independence, pledge that they would only trade in or reserve their currencies in the French central bank, and they would pay like an insane amount of tax for it,
I didn't
like
know
30 to 40% of their GDP. So France is still extracting an insane amount of resources from Africa. You know, France conducted in 2014 a campaign against African rebels. I forget the name of it. It's escaping me now, but it's important to mention, so I'm going to look it up real quick. You know?
Yeah.
It is called, where is it? Operation Barkhane, right? From 2014 to 2022. French military campaigns across the Sahel, going in, raiding villages, exterminating entire villages of people. And when groups would rise and arm themselves and fight back, oh, this is an Islamic terrorist group. We have to wipe them out. Even though it's just fathers trying to protect their children. People trying to unchain themselves of this oppression. You know? So this, it's colonialism was in the Muslim world was a crusade. It continues to be a crusade. You've heard of Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations, right? That the Muslim world and the Western world are doomed to clash. That we are incompatible as civilizations with each other, right?
They're like setting us up to fail.
They're literally predictive programming people that we need to destroy the Muslim world. We need to destroy. What did the Muslim do to you? This idea was being pushed around in the 2000s after 9/11. They did it because they hate our freedoms. We need to attack Iraq because they hate our freedoms. Dude, the average Iraqi doesn't give a crap about what you do or how you live. He just wants to live in peace and freedom. So we weaponized this idea and we brainwashed our own masses, because the average American is not a bad person, truly, right? But the average American also knows very little about foreign policy. They're extremely uneducated on the matter. They can't even point. Yeah, of course, they keep the masses dumb so that they can steer him whichever way they want. It's a purposeful thing. You educate the elite, but keep the hordes of masses at a subpar level of education and knowledge. It's a tactic of control, you know? So they have been essentially mass brainwashed into seeing the Muslim as an enemy. They see a turban, they automatically associate it with enemy. To the point they even call Sikh people terrorists, even though they have nothing to do with Islam, you know? So this comes to a cultural dimension of crusades now too. It's not just a warfare, physical, religious, it's a cultural dimension. They've been trying to wipe Islam out as an identity. This is why they've been funding the Rand Corporation, and they've been funding the Emirates and the Khalij to give us a toothless version of Islam, right? A version of Islam that has no girth to it, no girth to it, right? No aggression to it. That's what they want. They want a subservient slave Islam, the way that they gave a subservient slave Christianity to the African slaves that they imported here.
Yes.
So it's brainwashing, and they're trying to do that through Muslim emirs now.
So, I mean, essentially, the thought process is, do we revolt against the emirs and lose our security? Or do we continue in this tyrannical regime until some big change happens?
I think every Muslim who lives under the oppression of a Muslim ruler has it paramount upon them to resist and unchain themselves from that oppression. And that unchaining begins with unchaining yourself spiritually. So for them, they have a battle. For us, we have a battle. We're not under oppression right here. We can speak, we can do this podcast. But we are under spiritual oppression here. So while they may need to reclaim their political power, we need to reclaim our spiritual freedom. our spiritual power. We need to stop thinking of ourselves as inferior. You know, what's a civilization? Is a civilization towers and mega buildings, and is it the Burj Khalifa or the clock tower? And is that what makes a civilization? Would you call the Khalij a civilization?
No.
Why not?
Because I feel like that's just all glitz and glamour.
Right.
It's all surface level.
Right.
A civilization is defined by the condition of its people.
Correct. Correct. You can't just throw money at something and be like, here's a civilization. Now, per contrast, I'll take you to Medina, at the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had no glamorous buildings, had no high rises. Was that a civilization?
Yes.
Yes. That was the beginnings of the heart of civilization. Even though people were still living in mud huts, but why? Because as you said, it's defined by the character of a people. A civilization doesn't produce buildings. It produces thought. It produces consciousness, right? A civilization produces energy that then goes and shapes the world. Khalij is not producing energy, they're producing garbage. Like the Burj Khalifa doesn't even have a sewage system. They have to take trucks every single day to dispose of the waste. That's not a civilization. These are barefoot Bedouin tribes racing with each other to build the tallest buildings. That's it. So we need to reclaim, because that's a false sense of we need to reclaim our civilization. And that begins with thought and heart, right?
Yes.
Reshape your character. Give yourself a character that strives. I think that's where the Muslim needs to begin. Recultivate an Islamic character first. Otherwise, the foundations of everything are weak and will collapse.
SubhanAllah. I think to kind of, but before we end it, I want to go and state this really important hadith from the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Regarding the state of the Ummah and what we would face, right? And you know this hadith, this very famous hadith where the Rasul ﷺ essentially said that there will come a time where you are so great in number, and even with that great, that I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, even though you have such great numbers, the world will sit as if sitting around a table and will feast upon you, right? We are on the table.
Yeah.
And I remember there was that one Democratic person. Remember the DNC? There was that one individual who had said, "If you're not with us, then you're on the table," or something like that. Then you're on the menu.
Yeah. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
Then you're on the menu.
Right.
And that's a Democrat, by the way, that was saying that. And we know that the Democrats are essentially, and the Republicans, they are, although there are two separate parties, they all have the same goal in mind.
They push the same.
Okay, they all have the same goal. They just do it in different ways. Yeah. One says, waves some type of pride flag and says, "Hey, we're gonna bomb Gaza," and then the other one says, "Hey, we're just gonna bomb Gaza."
And Israel's our greatest ally.
Yeah, and then they wave the Israeli flag or something like that. This hadith and the circumstances that we see ourselves in is a testament to us needing to redefine our spirituality.
Agreed.
Nobody's gonna do it for us.
Right.
No one's gonna sit us down and say, "Hey, the Ummah is going through it. Maybe we should go and change it." Don't expect somebody to go and do that. Don't expect your parents to do it. Don't expect your siblings to do it. You need to do it. We need to do it. We need to rise up to the challenge every day of waking up for Fajr. That's a tough spiritual challenge. That blanket is really heavy.
Yeah.
But we need to do it. Why? Because we know from the Quran, as-salatu tanha ala al-fahsha'i wal-munkar, right? So if we ourselves are neglectful of our deen, the others are just as aware of that.
I'd like to wrap this up with a story.
Please.
And it's a story from the time of Isa. When Isa alayhi salam came to the Bani Israel, they were expecting their Messiah, right? He said, I am your Messiah. They said, no, you can't be our Messiah. Why not? Well, because you're not giving us political power. We need to overthrow the Roman Empire. Right? Isa alayhi salam gives them this statement that the modern Christian and some Muslims I've heard misinterpret completely. He said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto God what is God's. Right? So they thought at that time, with their low level of comprehension, that Isa said, obey Caesar. That Isa said, resign yourself to the system of Caesar. Right? But what he was really saying is, you cannot overthrow the system of Caesar without pledging yourself to the system of God first. Right? So give God what is God's first. Obey his commands. Follow his rules. Resign your spiritual state to God. Then you are ready to challenge Caesar. They rejected him. They said, you are not our Messiah. You are not helping us overthrow Caesar. They plotted with the Romans to assassinate him. And obviously Allah folded their plot and he took Isa up to the heavens. Right? And he will return soon, inshallah, to re-establish the system of justice. But what did the Jews do after that? Because at this point they're not Bani Israel anymore, they're Jews. They denied the Prophet, right? They mobilized a mass rebellion against the Romans, right? Tens of thousands of people took up arms, kicked out the Romans out of Jerusalem and out of the kingdoms. The Romans remobilized and sent a legion of like 100,000, and they slaughter over 250,000 Jews. And they scatter them all throughout the region, all throughout the world. They destroy the Second Temple. They light Jerusalem on fire. Right? And one of the emissaries from the Jewish resistance that was now crushed goes to Vespasian. Right? The general, the Roman general of that time, Vespasian, as you'd say. And they say, have some mercy on us. And he says, why would I have mercy on a people whose own God has abandoned? And this is a polytheist, by the way, right? But he tells him, why would I have mercy on a people that have been abandoned by their own God? This is a deep statement, because not only is Vespasian saying that they have been abandoned by God, God does not abandon you until you abandon him. And if you abandon him and do not return, then it's not his fault. You have wronged yourself. And we do not want to be in that state. Let's give to God what is God's first, inshallah.
Inshallah.
That's
I think that's a perfect way to end it.
Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give God what is owed to him. Give your Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what is owed to him. At the least, and I promise you, bi'Iznillah ta'ala, we will go from an ummah in exile to an ummah once again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you for joining us. Please like, follow.